Kamusta na mga ka-addict? If you are planning to install a regular thin tire on a suspension fork designed for fat tires, then this video is perfect for you. This is a quick and complete guide on how to install the Fiido Q1 or Q1s 12-inch front wheel on a dual crown suspension fork with 135mm dropout, designed for fat tires. Let's start. I've already installed the dual crown suspension fork on the Fiido Q1s frame. Check the link in the description how to install the dual crown suspension fork on Fiido Q1s. It's a complete and step-by-step guide. Remember that this type of suspension fork is designed for fat tires. This suspension fork has 135mm width dropout, which is too wide for the Fiido Q1 or Q1s stock front wheel. And also, the stock axle is too short and cannot be installed on the dual crown suspension fork. To be able to install the Fiido Q1 or Q1s stock front wheel on the dual crown suspension fork, I provided M10 by 180mm bolt screw partial thread axle. The length of the axle bolt is enough for the 135mm width of the suspension fork dropouts. I intentionally took a longer axle bolt to ensure that this side of the bolt without thread will be resting on the opening side of the dropout for more even and balanced installation of the wheel. I provided two axle spacers to keep the wheel in the center of the suspension fork. These axle spacers measure 10 by 15 by 25mm. I also provided washers. These two washers are 2mm in thickness. Time to install the wheel on the suspension fork. First, put the washers, then next is the axle spacer. Ensure to get the right size of axle spacer when trying to do this modification on your Fiido Q1 or Q1s. Then, put the other axle spacer and the washers for the other side of the wheel. The two axle spacers placed on both sides will maintain or keep the wheel in the center of the suspension fork. It is very important to use axle spacers with correct measurements. As you can see, it fits perfectly on the suspension fork dropouts with 135mm width. I put one more washers followed by the nut before tightening. Eventually, I placed the wheel on the floor to get better control while tightening the nut of the axle bolt. This part is crucial, so you have to make sure the axle bolt is tight to avoid accident. Loose axle bolt can lead to a wheel separating from the suspension fork. This can cause a dangerous situation. Also, check if the wheel is not wobbling, and make sure the wheel spins smoothly. You can cut this excess threaded part of the axle bolt if you want to. For me, I will keep it the way it is. This is a brake mount adapter for installing the brake caliper. Perfect for the stock 160mm disc rotor of the Fiido Q1 or Q1s. Since Fiido Q1 or Q1s stock wheel is a regular thin tire, you will need this kind of brake mount adapter to bring the brake caliper right over the disc rotor. There are two threaded holes in the left dropout of the suspension fork. It's where you're going to install the brake mount adapter. As you can see, the brake mount adapter is finally installed. Before proceeding to the next step, installing brake caliper, I want you to know that I installed the disc rotor spacer, 2mm in thickness. The disc rotor spacer is used to adjust the spacing between the brake caliper and the disc rotor. The spacer makes small adjustments to the rotor's position. The rotor spacer will help to align the disc rotor and the brake caliper in a relative position. As you can see, the disc rotor sits perfectly on the spacer. Now, let's proceed to the final part of this tutorial. Time to install the stock brake caliper. And finally, it's done. With the use of the brake mount adapter and the disc rotor spacer, I was able to align the disc rotor and the brake caliper in a relative position. You can see the brake caliper is right exactly over the disc rotor. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to support my channel by liking, commenting, and sharing all my videos. At syempre, maraming salamat. Muli kayong naligaw sa channel ko. Ride safe lang palagi mga ka-adik.